Television personality Pat Novak opened an episode of his show The Novak Element by stating that every country in the world except the United States is heavily protected by the robots of the multinational conglomerate OmniCorp. The story moves to Tehran, where OmniCorp operative Rick Maddox is handing out red wristbands to Novak reporter and cameraman Kelly Perkins, watching as large robots and other robots scan the area for citizens. At one point, a mother and her son Navid watch a robot at work. Navid's father, Irash, led the suicide bombers outside to film his own killing, which was broadcast live on international television. They attack and all the bombers are killed by the droids, although they managed to take out a few droids themselves in EM-208. Navid ran outside with a knife in hand and was shot and killed by a patrolling ED-209. The camera crew captured it all. Novak continued to admire the way the robots handled the situation, noting that OmniCorp CEO Raymond Sellers had the right ideas to get these robots into the United States, but Senator Hubert Dreyfus opposed it and passed the Dreyfus Act to prevent the form execution. Novak concluded by asking why America hates robots so much. In Detroit, Detroit Police Department Detective Alex Murphy went to meet with Sheriff Karen Dean. There were two other police officers in her office, John Lake and Andre Daniel. Dean blames Murphy for what happened the night before. After Lake and Daniel left the office, Murphy told his story. Murphy's story is told in flashback. He and Lewis have worked undercover fighting illegal arms shipments. They interviewed a dealer, Jerry White, who posed as a buyer, but they came to believe he was selling dirty guns. They act like they think Jerry is an undercover cop, scaring him when they discover he's working for Antoine Vallon. Murphy and Lewis looked up the serial numbers of the guns sold and found something shocking. Murphy and Lewis go to a restaurant to meet Wallon. Lewis insisted they needed backup because Wallonia's players could shoot at them during goal practice. The meeting started smoothly. Wallon and his right-hand man overheard what Murphy and Lewis were saying and seemed confused about their secret identities. Unfortunately, just as they were about to close the deal, Wallon immediately left the table when several cars pulled up in front of the restaurant and a group of gunmen armed with pistols and assault rifles opened fire. Murphy and Lewis responded with handguns attached to the stand. After a prolonged firefight in which several of his followers were killed, Murphy escaped by jumping through a glass window in an alley. Several followers waited in the alley to wipe him out. Using the dumpster as a shield, Murphy advanced and fired at the henchman. Lewis was about to chase Murphy when a follower hiding in the kitchen rushed out and shot him dead. Murphy stayed by his side until an ambulance arrived and Varon managed to escape. At this point, Dean reminds Dean Murphy that he shouldn't take on a mission like this without talking to him first. In Washington. Back in Detroit, Silas met with his marketing partners, Lisa Klein and Tom Pope. Realizing that more than half of the country's population would not support robots protecting their streets, Silas suggested putting a human in the car. OmniCorp Rehabilitation Center Dr. Dennett Norton and his sidekick Jace Kim tell the story of a man whose arm has been replaced by an artificial robotic limb. Dr. Norton told him to give it a try. The man starts playing the guitar and he and his wife are excited. The man's emotional level began to rise. Drive. Norton is then summoned by Silas. They treat potential amputees in the man-machine program with Klein and Pope, both experienced police officers, but Dr. Norton and Dr. Silas rejects them because of their physical form or psychological examination. Meanwhile, we learn that Lake and Daniel, the two cops that Chief Dean kicked out of his office earlier, are the ones who turned Murphy into Wallon. They meet Varon at a bar. The two detectives thought it would be easier to kill Murphy, and Wallon initially rejected the idea because of the increased attention he would receive from the police, until Lake and Daniels reminded him that they were the ones to kill Murphy. Check him. So that afternoon, when Murphy visited Lewis in the hospital, Wallon had one of his men plant a bomb in the driver's side of Murphy's car. Alex is at home with his wife Clara and son David, 10. After putting David to bed, he and Clara were getting intimate when the car alarm went off. The car alarm is a trap that lures him out and then detonates the car from a distance. Alex suffered severe injuries. 4th-degree burns all over his body. Both legs and an arm had to be amputated. He was blind in one eye and possibly deaf. Drive. Norton and his medical team, seeing the perfect candidate for their project, convinced Clara to agree to let Alex work on the project, despite her concerns about the kind of life he will lead. After 3 months, Alex attends a party with Clara, Jack and his wife. Alex and Clara dance to a Frank Sinatra song. As it turns out, It's a memory that Norton and Kim saw while putting the finishing touches on Alex's new mechanical suit. They woke him up and he was shocked by what he saw. He grabbed Norton by the throat and threw him down. As Alex ran out of the room, Kim tried to stop him, but Norton told her to let him go. Alex kept running until he jumped over the wall of the facility and across the field before they could stop him and bring him back. Norton then turned off Alex while he was running away. Back at the lab, Norton came face to face with Alex and showed him what was left of him. Only his head, heart, lungs and brain were still intact. Alex is horrified by this and demands his death. Norton reminded him that Clara had signed a consent form, so if they let him die, the job would be pointless. Alex later spoke to Clara via video chat. She was glad to hear from him again. He then sees the news about his assassination attempt and is frustrated with his suspicions. Wallen remains on the streets. Lake and Daniel sabotage the investigation into his assassination attempt, and Jack provides information to support his fallen partner. Alex was taken to the simulator room where he was placed next to the basic EM-208. As seen on screen, the droid reacted to the threat faster than Alex, who was hesitant, aware of the potential harm to civilians, but also showed a more rational strategy. Maddox stated that he wouldn't pay $1 for it. After Alex's simulator training was complete, he began field training. He was tested with Maddox in an exoskeleton with other robots. As Alex eases his way through the hail of droids, he shoots them all down and launches an all-out assault on Maddox. Norton takes Alex to his house where he will meet Clara and David for the first time. David said welcome home to his father. Alex walked into his house and although both Clara and David were surprised by his new look, they still hugged him. Hold a public press conference to introduce the new, rejuvenated Murphy to the city. As he prepares, Norton and King watch the emotions in Murphy's head on a monitor, feeding the police database information into Murphy's head. When he began to remember his assassination attempt, he became overwhelmed and began to convulse. Drive. Norton grabbed him, and Klein and Pope urged him to find a solution within minutes. Han and Kim are determined to bring Murphy's emotional level down. He walks outside to find Clara and David waiting for him. David greeted his father, but Murphy just walked on blankly. The crowd fell silent as he walked in front of them and he began searching the crowd for criminals with warrants. Things escalate when he spots a man in the crowd, Thomas King, who is wanted for murder. Murphy called the man over to arrest him. King took off running until Murphy jumped into the crowd and shot him in the back with a taser, knocking him out. Novak himself used the incident on his show as a reason why people finally supported the new show. He pointed out that King was standing next to two officers who could not identify him, and that he had been on the run from police for 6 years on charges of rape, assault and murder, but was caught by Alex in an instant. As a result, public perception of the Dreyfus Act began to change. The people of Detroit began to embrace Alex. Silas asked Dr. Norton to keep Murphy away from his family for now. Murphy enters the police station and the chief dean informs the other officers about several suspects in the murders. Murphy said he would take over the case and look for a criminal named John Biggs. He patrols the city on a motorcycle. He captures several junkies who are completely drunk and asks one of them to tell him where Biggs' drug lab is. Murphy found the lab and stormed in, shooting Biggs' thugs. Biggs tries to escape but Murphy backs him into the corner. He tried to throw a grenade at Murphy, but was shot in the leg and the grenade fell, detonating at the same time. A few days later, Alex was stopped on the street by Clara when he had a bigger crime to fight. When she told him that David was traumatized and having nightmares, she begged him to listen to her. Although Alex seemed to ignore him, after a while he couldn't resist turning on the CCTV camera and watching the reporter chase Clara and David as she tried to take him to school. Realizing how estranged he was from his family, Murphy drove home and inspected the crime scene where his car had exploded. He reviewed surveillance video of the explosion and was further horrified to discover that David had witnessed his burning body, leaving him in fear, anguish and pain. He is determined to destroy the hero once and for all. First, Murphy goes back to Jerry White, an arms dealer, who first tells him and Louis Wallen who is behind the arms trade. He chases after Jerry and pulls him out of the car to question him. Jerry resisted at first and tried to avoid answering until Murphy broke his arm and forced him to reveal the identity of the Wallonia crew he was involved with. Using his access to telephone company records, Murphy located the Wallonia warehouse. As he drove to the warehouse, Vallon was told by someone that Murphy was coming. Wallen called his men to arms. As an extra precaution, they turned off the lights and put on night vision goggles. hoping to make it harder for Murphy to shoot them. They shot Murphy as he crashed through the door on his motorcycle. During the barrage, Murphy's suit was shot and his visor shattered, but he killed all of Wallen's remaining gunmen and eventually left Wallen. After shooting Warren, Murphy collected the gun from a fallen soldier, scanned his fingerprints, and found Lake's and Daniels' fingerprints. Murphy went back to the police station and Jack followed him. He interrogates Lake and Daniels and broadcasts the meeting on all the station's monitors to prove their involvement in the bombing. Daniels tried to shoot Murphy, but was also shot. Lake admitted that Dean was involved in the restaurant shooting and the car bombing. He attacks Lake and then goes to confront Dean. Maddox locked Murphy up in a facility before allowing her to confess. Maddox reported the situation to Silas in the helicopter. In another episode of the Novak Element, Novak comments on how Murphy exposed the corruption in the police department, further indicating why it's time to finally put robots on the streets. Meanwhile, Silas meets with Maddox, Klein and Pop to discuss Murphy's condition. Klein released a statement to the public saying Murphy was in critical condition. Silas decides to use Murphy as a symbol of martyrdom to evoke sympathy. Silas sent Maddox and other mercenaries to eliminate Murphy and was about to tell Clara that Alex died from his injuries. Klein arrives at Clara's house and escorts her and David to headquarters to meet Silas. With King's help, Dr. Norton entered the area where Murphy was being held and warned him that the mercenaries had been sent by Silas to kill them both. Murphy woke up in time to kill the two thugs before they could shoot him and Norton. Murphy rode his motorcycle to OmniCorp headquarters and was assisted by Lewis, who called in the SWAT team for help. He fired an electric shock at a guard at the building and forced the others to retreat. He crashes his motorcycle into a building, attracting the attention of two ED-209 droids. They shoot Murphy, but Murphy tells them to shoot each other. The third droid was confused and fell from the height, and Alex's left arm was trapped below. As more and more droids came in, Murphy was forced to pick up the machine gun that fired from his left hand. The robot shoots at him and knocks him over. Lewis ran up and stood in front of him, giving Alex a chance to escape. He was spotted by Maddox and another thug, both wearing red wristbands, making it impossible for Murphy to shoot either of them. Before Maddox could fire the fatal shot, Lewis killed him by shooting him in the back. While Silas waited for the helicopter, Murphy reached the roof of the building. With him were Clara and David, another mercenary, and Klein and the Pope. The two stepped back as Alex ordered and they obeyed. He tries to arrest Silas for trying to kill him, but he also wears red cuffs so he can't be shot. Silas pointed the gun at Alex, then at Clara and David. This gave Alex enough incentive to override his programming and shoot Silas, who returned fire. After Silas' death, Clara and David threw themselves at Alex's side. After a while, Alex got a new set of repaired clothes. Clara and David visit him. He smiled as they entered. The final scene shows another clip from Novak's Element. When Norton testified against OmniCorp's plan, the president would veto the repeal of the Dreyfus Act. Still, Novak stood by the robot and continued to praise Seal and blast Norton as a whistleblower. At the end of the show, Novak encouraged the audience to stop complaining and embrace the show. As a movie recap channel, we thank you for being a part of our community. Stay tuned for more exciting content.